So in this segment, we're going to be talking about class sizes in England could go up to 60, warn head teachers in a funding pay row. And someone brought this to my attention during a live stream, and I didn't believe them. I think my voice went pretty high pitched, so yeah, check the live streams out 6 p.m. on Saturday, BST. But yeah, I kind of gasped at this story. I struggled a lot. So schools in England are preparing to move to class sizes as many as 60 children from September to deal with a funding crisis that head teachers will force them to cut staff, and September is not far away, people. You know, these won't be school classes anymore. These are the sizes for lecture halls. You know, this story is driving me nuts. You know, students need one-to-one attention, especially the ones that struggle at certain subjects. Take it from me, you know, the kid who struggled a lot in school, you're not getting one-to-one attention at this. You'd be lucky to get anything. And also, how the heck are teachers meant to mark, you know, that amount of work? You know, this is absolute madness. You know, as teachers are meant to give individual feedback to students once, you know, a certain amount of like homework and stuff is done. How are they supposed to do that? And the head teachers might be exaggerating a bit here, but if you merge classes with each other, you wouldn't be that far off the 60 mark for students in one class. The government insists that there is still room in the school budget to cover the 4.5% pay rise that teachers overwhelmingly rejected last month, as well as rising costs. But angry head teachers have warned that next year they will reach the brink with no option but to cut staff and increase class sizes. So that 4.5% offer is an absolute joke, given the inflation rates and other things. Like, it's abysmal. Teachers have faced significant, you know, below inflation pay rises, or should we say pay cuts, since 2010. Shouts out to the coalition government for that. So the government are saying that that the pay rises are being offered to teachers or not be funded from new money from the government. The schools have suffered a lot of pay cuts since 2010, you know, budgetary cuts. Some with structural issues will have to find the money in their existing budgets to pay their teachers. These budgets being massively overstretched as is. Some schools are considering shortening the school day to cut teaching time, with one academy leader warning that another year of underfunding would force many schools into a 4-day work week. And, you know, I'm a fan of a 4-day work week, but not like this. You know, it's going to impact working parents a lot who pick up their kids after school, and make it so they would have to do less hours in order to get their kids, pick them up. Or they would have to potentially leave their jobs, as some employers don't want to be flexible with the hours they give because they suck. A 4-day work week for schools again would have similar problems. This is not to blame the schools for this. They have to deal with rocketing energy costs as schools pay the business rates for energy. Higher food costs as well, as among other things. Like, they don't have pay rises within the budget. We've seen schools go into debt. There was a story in the Observer from October which claimed 90% of schools would run out of money in 2023. It does not look like the Tories will make more money available to schools, at least not enough. They can talk about the billions, but when you divide it per school, it doesn't go far. The Tories don't care about schools because, let's be honest, kids can't vote. They're an easy target for budget cuts. A senior leader in a large multi-academy trust, speaking anonymously to avoid alarming parents, said, quote, "We'll be forced to collapse classes. I'm looking at going from 10 sets to 8 in maths and English, with a top set of up to 50 or even 60 kids in a big space," end quote. And, you know, top set for anything means you're in the top of that school or the top of your year group. So you're not going to get the one-to-one attention you need. So you're going to struggle to get the highest grades, which you would probably get if you were given enough one-to-one attention. The leader said they were already having to, quote, "double up classes," end quote, to cover absences, and this would get worse. One of their secondary academies had 15 staff off last week, with stress-related illnesses notably on the rise. So you have teachers that are overworked, and you create a negative cycle of potentially teachers going off for stress reasons, and that puts more workload on other teachers, which is going to lead them to having stress issues as well. This is just so stupid. The leader said, quote, "The senior team has been teaching 100 kids a time in the hall to relieve pressure on teachers. Cover lessons make behaviour worse." End quote. He is considering cutting costs by starting the school day late or finishing early once a week. God damn, you know, just... What can you say? Teaching 100 kids at a time in a hall to relieve pressure on teachers. He said, "If we had another year of this underfunding, by next year I think you'll have a lot of schools going to a 4-day week because they can't afford to teach for 5, end quote. He has just voted to strike for the first time, saying, quote, not being funded has happened so many times. I'm fed up of being lied to by by the government, end quote. And, for them to go to a 4-day work week, that means teachers might face salary cuts as well, and you're just going to create more and more problems. I despair at this, And this is what 13 years of having the Tories in charge has led to. Huge class sizes, a massive lack of teachers, with more of them leaving the profession. My fear is that the schools will get blamed for these problems when it's down to central government. We have seen the Tories manage this before. This person cited saying they voted to strike for their first time. They're the person in charge of multiple schools, and the strikes are impacting, the day-to-day running of these schools that they are in charge of. And so for them to go and say we're going to strike is just mad. It's just such a mess. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan, the absolute intellectual titan, insisted last week that schools could afford a 4.5% average teacher pay rise, with just 90 million of additional funding after the government committed to 2 billion for each school for the next 2 years in last year's autumn statement. But the head teachers and unions say the extra funding has been hoovered up by soaring energy bills and largely unfunded pay rises for teachers and support staff last summer, and increased costs of everything from school meals to exercise books, leaving many school staff facing cuts next year. The Tories love banding about big figures, but given what we know about the energy and food crises, amongst other things, the cost of transporting goods has gone up considerably. So all of those books and pens and whatever else a school needs to function, that's all gone up in price. All of this increased funding has been eaten up. This is what the head teachers have already said has happened, and they've said this consistently. James Bowen, Director of Policy at the National Association of Head Teachers Union, said, quote, school leaders are angry. They are being told this is all affordable, but there is no money left. Our members say it's been spent on keeping their heads above water, end quote. So this association will be based around a collection of head teachers. If they're all saying similar things, that means this teacher's pay rise, without it being funded by new money from the government, could lead to breaking these schools financially and creating all sorts of animosity within the schools. Dave McPartlin, head of Flake Fleet Primary School in Lancashire, said, quote, with a 4.5% pay rise and no extra money, we would be in deficit, so staff would have to go. We already can't afford to replace some great staff who are leaving, end quote. You're going to lose experienced staff by having to let go staff members, especially because the experienced ones, the ones that have been there long term, generally get paid more as well. The head teacher of a primary academy, who asked to remain anonymous, said, quote, for our older children, class sizes will have to increase. That means we won't meet their needs fully, end quote. John Utley, chief executive of Teal Multi Academy Trust in Yorkshire, said that any cuts to the teacher numbers next year would hit the poorest students the hardest, saying, quote, we rightfully focus on disadvantaged children, and the single biggest factor in their success is the quality of teacher in front of them, end quote. And if they don't get the quality teaching that they deserve, let's be honest now, a good education should be a right in any country, especially a developed one. They're just going to struggle in school, and it creates more long-term problems for the students and the country. Like, the idea behind preventative care is to look after something from the jump, so then you don't have problems long-term, and the Tories just hate preventative measures, honestly. Susan Best, head of the Great Kings Hill Church of England Primary School in High Wycombe, said, quote, if support staff continue to leave, we'll not be able to replace them. Is that the right decision for the children? Absolutely not, end quote. And that's true, children need support staff as well, and it's all going wrong here. The Department for Education said, quote, since the government took office, we are now more than 24,000. We have more than 24,000 teachers in schools, and our secondary schools have an average of 22 pupils per class, end quote. And I think the government are using a few tricks here to reach this 22 pupils per class number. A-level classes are generally small, around 12 students or less. At least that was my experience of it, so that would strike down the average a lot. Some other classes, like language classes, can be pretty small as well. Even when I was in school, the average was way higher than 22. When I was in school, the average was higher than 22, and I finished A-level around 2014-15, and those A-level classes were quite small, but the GCSE class levels were quite big. So, they're pulling a lot of tricks here, in my opinion, to get this 22 pupils figure, especially when, even under New Labour, I don't think it was 22 per class, it was closer to 30. So, the Tories didn't, all the cuts that they've done, and all of these teachers, who have left the profession, etc., how have the class sizes gone down? No, it don't make sense. So yeah, anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.